Welcome to Journey to Safety, a podcast by United Response. I'm Claire Steele, and today we'll dive into real experiences from people with disabilities who have faced hate crimes on buses, trains, and other forms of transport. We'll explore how these incidents impact lives and what we can do to raise awareness and drive change. While statistics show a rise in such incidents, the personal experience behind those numbers really tell the story. We are honoured to have Helen Dolphin with us today, a well-known disability activist who has been working tirelessly to make public transport more inclusive and safer. So Helen, from your experience, why do you think public transport can be a difficult space for disabled people when it comes to hate crimes?
I think one of the difficulties, and particularly for myself with mobility impairments, is that I can't very easily move anywhere. So once I'm where I am, I'm kind of stuck there. So if, someone else was being subjected to, say, name calling, or sometimes just people just like constantly like kicking the back of your seat, you just get up and you just move away. Well, as a disabled person, I just can't do that. I feel like I'm trapped where I'm put. And if you're travelling in your wheelchair, you've got to sit in the wheelchair space, and that's the only place you can actually go. So I do feel that an element for me is just the inability to kind of exit or go and find someone on the train to help me. I'm literally just there, subjected to whatever people throw at you, and there's very little you can do about it.
So for people who might be unaware, what are some of the signs that bystanders could look out for that show a disability hate crime might be happening?
I think it's anything really that makes people feel uncomfortable. I think that's a good, indication. Is someone, treating someone in a way that you think, oh, I don't think I'd be feeling very happy if that was me or someone in my family. I think that's a really good indication. It's not always that obvious. I think it's not always, really, name calling in a kind of loud way. It can be just, say, like I said, like just things like just constantly kicking your seat, or, making you feel kind of uncomfortable about being there, really invading your personal space sometimes, like putting luggage almost on top of you, like leaning on you, using your chair, kind of to hold on to, but not in a way that's almost like inappropriate. It's kind of difficult to say sometimes, because you don't always realise it yourself that people are kind of taking their aggressions out on you. But it does happen, and it happens to a lot of people. And I think disabled people is just a target. I think we're just seen as an easy target. We can't always fight back very well. We're not always good with our words or our quick responses, or being able, definitely physically, it can be really difficult to do anything, about it, like moving and I think that's what makes us those kind of targets. And people always pick on vulnerable people that they see as defenceless, because it makes, I don't know why people do it. I guess it makes them feel important or big, or I don't really understand it myself, because I would never want to make another person feel bad about themselves, or, I'd rather have a nice chat rather than, but there's clearly people that do, because we see all the time about these kind of cases.
So why do you think people might hesitate to report these crimes? Is there something that makes it difficult for disabled people to speak up?
I think one of the reasons is perhaps we don't really think that it is a hate crime. We're so used to the way that people treat us in sometimes a negative way, that it just becomes our norm, and it's not something we think, actually that is a hate crime. And I think it's with a lot of, of abuse, you don't realise it because you just live it all the time. And it's only when someone perhaps points it out to you that you realise, well, actually that isn't how I should be treated, that wasn't something I should put up with. But then you kind of think, well, it was only a few names, or it was only this, or it was only that. I don't want to waste police time. And I think you kind of have those thoughts in your head, and it's only when it gets really serious that you might consider it. And I think we just put up with this kind of adverse behaviour because we just see it as, well, we don't really want to, we don't want to be in, it's time consuming. If you're living with a disability, every day can be really quite exhausting and quite tiring, and it's just another thing that you just don't want to have to deal with.
So, how do you think public transport authorities can make the reporting process better so that victims feel supported?
I mean, I think there's a lot going on. I think it's really recognised now that it's a really big issue, and I've seen some, really good initiatives. I went to Transport for London's bystander training, which was really, really good and really helpful. And it's really saying, we know that this is happening, and I think even acknowledging that for people, I think is really powerful. So people like, they're running courses in it, they recognise it, and it's getting the general public involved and saying, look, this is how you can help people. It might be
That's
you,
brilliant.
it might be someone else, but let's all help each other. And I think that was a really powerful message. On rail networks, we have the, you can easily text the transport police to say when something's kind of happening. There's guards on stations, some are on trains, you can get help from them. There's also a buzzer that you can press that you can speak directly to the driver if you really feel kind of threatened by the behaviour that's happening in the train. I think, on buses, you're not so trapped in such a way. It's kind of easier to get to a bus driver perhaps than it is. You're not going to just say hi to the person on the train. I think that's a bit harder. I haven't really read much about hate crime on, say, aviation, but we know that it happens for sure on the railways, and we know that it happens in, the buses. So people that want to get in onto the bus are sometimes kind of prevented. People won't move for them, and then spend the rest of the day, their journey, making their life difficult because they've had to move their suitcase or something that they didn't want to do. So yeah, we there is stuff going on, but I think another thing I think that they really need to do is just train staff to be more aware of it. And I think if people are aware of it, then they'll be more confident about actually kind of tackling it. Because if people have had the correct training, and I know having attended the training I did, I now feel more confident about offering to help someone, and it wasn't about anything physical. It wasn't even about interacting with the person, the perpetrator. It was very much, talking to the person that's being called the names and having a conversation, making them know that you're there, and kind of distracting the person really when they see that you're just like chatting to them, then maybe they'll just kind of go away. So there was lots of really good ideas that came out of those sessions. So I think training is another really important factor.
Getting the knowledge out there, as we say, definitely. So, raising public awareness is really important, um, from what you were saying. What's the best way to help more people understand the issue of disability hate crime? So, you were saying about Transport for London.
I mean, I think one of the ways is clearly United Response is doing some fantastic work. You've got your podcast. It's just making people aware that this actually is a crime, and it is something that could be reported, and it is something that can be tackled, and it isn't something that we should continue just accepting as the usual part of our lives, because it's time that we stopped making disabled people feel like they're less important, that they've got less right to be on public transport, that their lives are not as important as someone else's. Like, that has all got to stop. And part of that is a kind of the tackling of this adverse behaviours that we do see a lot of from people that see themselves, from my experience, is like more superior to you, more important, have jobs that are more important than anything you could possibly doing. And as someone said to me once, I pay for my seat on the train. It's like, do they think that we travel for free? Like, so it's also tackling those kind of prejudices that people do they just generally think we do everything for nothing? I think that sometimes people think that, and that can make people like angry towards you, like misinformation, which is often fueled by, I read so many things in newspapers which are just not true about disabled people, and it's really unfair, and it sort of stirs up hatred when we don't actually, we don't need that in our lives. Our lives are difficult enough. We don't need any of this, and it needs to stop.
So, On that, can you share any success stories or programs that you've seen that are helping to reduce disability hate crime on public transport? Like as you were saying, the Transport for London, what they've been doing.
Yeah, those are the only ones that I'm actually aware of. I'm not really aware of anyone else, but I'm really hoping that other transport providers will see what Transport for London have done. And, you know, when I went on the course, there were other people that weren't just, you know, local people. They were other like transport providers wanting to see what was happening, what's going on,
Yeah,
what are they doing. And I think hopefully we'll see more of this kind of thing going on, and there'll be more people that are trained and happy about interacting with the person, and being an active bystander, and intervening and making sure that people feel more confident and reassured that they're there, and we can tackle it. And it's joining together. It's just everyone standing up to others and saying this isn't acceptable anymore. I'm not going to tolerate it.
so, do you think the way public transport is designed or how accessible it is has an impact on whether hate crimes happen?
Oh, that's quite an interesting question. I've not really thought. I mean, I guess we're so used to, trains being designed in a certain way and buses being designed in a certain way. I mean, I think if there was the ability to have more sort of free movement, where you could perhaps get away more easily, that might help. But then, people can follow you, and people do, and, you can get off the train. And I think perhaps it's more about kind of having perhaps more help points or ability to summon help. I think knowing that that's there. I think, we have so much CCTV everywhere. I'm amazed that
Yeah,
people continue to behave in the way they do, because everything is generally caught on camera. So there's often the evidence. It's encouraging people as well, I think, to report it. Like we said earlier, we've got to report these crimes that happen to us, and not just brush it off as something that always happens. I think, we have great big spaces on trains and buses and stations for posters and bus stops. So maybe we need to start advertising that, maybe people don't even realise that they're doing it. And I sometimes think that, are they so used to their behaviour that they think that that's acceptable and normal, and actually tackling them. And that can be really difficult. It's very difficult to manage other people and how they behave. But one of the kind of biggest criticisms that we hear about on rail is treatment from other passengers, and you think, well, what can we do about that? But maybe we have to be thinking, like, what can we do, because that's what's stopping some disabled people from travelling. And we don't want that. We want disabled people on the trains, we want them travelling, we want them on the buses, we want people going to work and to public appointments,
yeah,
and leisure activities and seeing their families. We want that. We don't want people stuck indoors because they're worried about what they're going to meet or face if they travel, because disabled people have got so much to offer, and people often can't do it because they can't get to places.
thank you. So, what advice would you give to someone who wants to support a friend or family member who's gone to someone who's gone through this kind of experience?
I mean, I think the main thing, is, there's only so much we can do sometimes as friends and family. I think, we can support our friends, we can be there for them. But if someone is significantly impacted, then they perhaps need more professional help than what we can offer, as kind of as friends and family. But I think it's just being there. It's like maybe offering to travel with that person for a few times to get their confidence back up. Some places offer like travel training, where maybe people could take up that offer of that and have more of an experience and just see that it's maybe, things are in place. I think that's probably, it's a difficult one, because you don't really know how badly impacted someone has been by this, if it's gone on and on, if they've had a really significant and serious encounter. And, some hate crimes can be very violent.
No.
Some people have died through hate crime, and that's why it is so important that we really start to tackle and address it, because I don't think it goes from nothing to someone doing that kind of crime. It will start with the lower level kind of stuff that we tend to brush off, I think, as disabled people.
Thank you, Helen. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the world on? disability hate crime on transport.
I just wish that we could all just be nicer to each other and a little bit kinder. And I think if we could do that, and just, you never know what is going on in someone else's world and what's going on in their life. And if we can just be a friendly smile, don't take your bad day out on people that have got nothing to do with your bad day. And I think then we could just all get along, so much better. Be a bit more considerate. Don't put your enormous suitcase in the wheelchair space. Or if you do, don't be grumpy about moving it. If a wheelchair user needs to get in that space, like it to me, it just seems like common sense. But yeah, I just hope for, maybe next year, just happier,
Definitely.
kinder interactions. That would just be lovely.
It so would. Thank you so much, Helen. These personal experiences remind us all how important it is to take action. Everyone can do something to help, whether it's by reporting hate crimes when we see them, supporting someone who's been affected, or just raising that awareness. Thank you so much for listening, and a special thank you to Helen for joining us today. Stay safe, stay strong, and remember, together we can make a difference.